Hi guys. Welcome back to another episode of What You Saying, a gender equality podcast that focuses on gender equality as well as various other topics. So today I'm your host, Grace Sikity.
I'm your other host, Ray Yunis, and this is our guest,
Oscar Cruz.
Woo! So guys, let's get straight into it. What do you want to talk about, Oscar?
Well, I kind of wanted to talk about things. A couple of things.
Makes sense.
But I wanted to mainly focus on like the more male side of feminism because I feel like it's a very intricate and very delicate topic which people touch on so much, but they don't touch on it enough or in the proper ways. So that's sort of where I want to start off. Are you guys cool with that?
No. Let's go. Go on.
I understand that because
Are we allowed to cuss on here?
moderately.
Moderately. Okay, cool.
This is a family-friendly channel.
Sweet.
Yeah, you can cuss if you want to. If you want to,
Sweet,
you have
man.
free will.
Yeah.
Speak exactly.
Yeah.
Speak how you feel.
Thank you.
But yeah, I understand that because I feel like, especially when the gender equality group first started, lots of like guys were coming up to me and they were like, "Can I come? Like, is it okay for me to come?" And I was like, "Yeah," because like a lot of the time men feel like feminism isn't a space for them and they're not like involved in those conversations. So it's important to talk about.
Yeah, like I found that a lot when I first came to Gender Equality Club because I think I'm right now the only guy that goes to Gender Equality Club at all. I'm the only like, guy in the school, cis guy at least. Yeah. So it's like it was first off really intimidating to go into there alone, and second off it's really intimidating to put your own interjections into there because like when you're trying to make your interjections, it's like first off you don't really want to speak over the other minority groups, and second off you also don't want to put your own interjections about the male side of feminism because that's not really what the conversation is about most of the time because men aren't strictly the minority in the conversation, although like men are deeply affected by gender inequality at the same time. And like I found that same thing as well where it came to like people in my class and I'd be like, "Yo, come to Gender Equality Club," and like either people would dismiss the conversation because it's like, I'm a guy, why would I be going to this club which is built for women or something like that? Yeah. It's like, why would I do that? Or like, I'm a guy, I'm going to be going to a room full of women and they're basically just going to berate me. And that's the common thing that men have. And like it goes back like a long, because I went to like an all boys secondary school as well. And it's deep rooted. It's like, you know, heavily in there from the start. It's like guys just left, right and center. It's like there's part of them and you can know that there's part of them which like wants that and wants that sort of capacity to be able to talk. But it's just the like the group mentality and depersonalization that comes from an environment like that, which is so difficult to find a place for your voice as a man.
Do you feel as if like being in the gender equality group, and as you said, you're the only like cis man there, and you feel as if you're invalid to talk about your opinions? Is it merely because you're the only man there, so you feel as if your opinions would be like demolished? No,
I actually think that like the Gender Equality Club is like a really good environment for talking about those difficult conversations, because like even when I hear it like now being said in this conversation right now, me hearing that I feel like men's problems are invalidated in just general like society and progressivism, that sounds like I'm victimizing, you know, what's going on. Yeah. But like when I'm in that right environment, it's like people take that time to listen. Yeah. People take that time to like actually hear what you have to say because I think when it comes to the conversation of gender, it is every single part of it is just as important as each other because they're just as deeply enrooted with each other as well. And like that's one thing I have to say. But I also think that at the same time, I think, you know, problematically speaking, I think Gender Equality Club doesn't push enough in that direction of being able to look at every single front of it.
Yeah, I agree with that because when I first joined the group, my motivation for joining the group was like to bring light to trans issues and non-binary issues because I kind of already knew that Gender Equality Group, it was mostly going to be like people going there to talk about women's issues. And when I went to discussions, I went to the group meetings, it was mostly women there, cis women there. And I constantly felt like I had to be the ones pushing other things to the table. Like I had to be the ones like bringing up race, bringing up trans people, bringing up non-binary people. And I think it's just a case of having people in those groups at those discussions so they can bring it up, because that's not your experience. You won't be thinking about that. Like you won't want to bring it up.
Yeah. And I think that the intimidating part of it as well is like when you're that only person in that situation, like it's almost like you're the only person who can speak on that behalf.
Yeah.
And no one else is there to support you. You're your own representative of like something which is much larger than your own. And like you don't have all of the details. I'm 17-year-old.
Exactly.
17.
We're like two 17-year-olds and we're surrounded by a bunch of people. We have no idea about our own identity yet. So imagine us having to speak on the entirety of what identity is in that conversational setting.
I completely understand, because even like with myself, when I joined the gender equality group, like I knew that I was going to be the only person who knew of like, I'm not a feminist, I'm a womanist. So a lot of people know what a womanist is. And then I'll probably only be like one of the rarest black people also, as well. Like, it's like things where it's just like, you have to be the first person to do it, which is kind of like, you wish you didn't have to do it, because it's like really understandable how like you'll feel as if you're the first. It's a lot of pressure. You're like the first like man to come to the gender equality group and talk about it, and even continuously going to the group as well. So it's like all this pressure that you have to do to actually say something. So you're not going to be able to know everything at all, you know? So it's like you're trying your hardest to actually uplift people.
It's nerve-wracking.
No, it is.
It's like, it's kind of funny going in there, because it's like you'll get those people who will give you praise for doing that sort of stuff. And it's like, I remember the first session I came in, I sat down and then we finished the session and I was like, Oscar, thank you for coming. Done a great job coming here. It's like, you know, I'm just trying to do my bit. I'm just trying to have a conversation. But I think that like leads on to what I wanted to talk about today in a broader sense, when it comes to the idea of like when you have that conversation of progressivism, and when is that conversation okay to have and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's just a difficult conversation to get into, because like, where do you start?
Yeah. Because I feel like everyone expects everyone else to like already know everything.
Yeah.
So, which it makes sense, like wanting people to have the same morals and stuff as you.
Yeah.
But not, you know, it's very like tricky. It's like, where do we start?
Yeah.
Where do we start from?
Yeah. And like I tried to bring it up in like the first session that I went to, where it's like, I think I said something along the lines of, Anna said something along the lines of like, oh yeah, we how do we feel about the pace of, you know, society and feminism?
Yeah.
And like I was like, I think we're moving too quickly. I think we're moving way too quickly, because.
What do you mean by that? Like we're moving too quick?
Yeah, because it's like when you hear that at first hearing, it's like what?
Yeah, but literally, I'm like, what are you talking about?
But I think like part of it is, I think
we are back, guys. So last thing we were talking about was how you feel as if that feminists are running.
Well, I don't think it's feminism. I think it's just like society as a whole, like it's like social justice and stuff. And like this is a very like tricky topic to try. And
we don't want to cancel you, Oscar. This is your first time here. I don't want to cancel you. Like.
No, I want to walk that line a little bit, because I think like the way to actually progress as a society is to challenge ourselves. That's the whole thing around it. It's challenging ourselves as an individual, because if you continuously live your life with this sort of idea of how society is progressing, then you're only progressing as how society progresses. You're basically a sheep. You're not changing anything within yourself internally. You're only changing on the basis of what society deems to be right in terms of change.
Well, you're spitting bars.
So when it comes to like that sort of stop it. When it comes to like that conversation where it's like, shit, I think we're moving too quickly. I'm saying it as in, I think we are moving too quickly. I think us personally are not moving quick enough.
Yeah.
So I think when we have something like, where's a good way to, I think cancel culture is the best example, or like the sort of dynamics and aspects that came around where George Floyd was killed.
Yeah.
That sort of way where it's like, I remember that time, and like there was like some really interesting like niche perspectives on it. And I don't know why they were niche, but they were really interesting, because it was like everybody else was saying, post this black thing on your Instagram, you know, tag 10 of your friends who care about Black lives. If you don't, you're a fucking horrible person.
No,
you're crazy.
Scary.
You're a demon.
You
man.
hate black people.
But it was this whole idea of like herd morality. Like if enough people are doing it, you should be doing it.
Yeah.
Because that's how people view society as a whole. It's like, oh, in the past that thing was okay because most people thought it was okay.
Exactly.
No, it was never okay, and that's not like. But yeah, I know what you're talking about with the whole like, post this black square. That means you hate black people. Who came up with that?
No, because like you see the thing with Twitter, like everyone knows what Twitter is. So like everyone like, even sometimes my siblings will talk about how like, oh, Twitter used to be like so easy. You can just say any jokes, you know, it doesn't matter. Everyone now here is soft. And no, people actually validate their opinions and who they are as a person. So it doesn't mean that they're soft. They actually care about themselves, and they don't want to like a racist joke about them, because it's just like, no, it's not okay, you know? So just things like that. Like what's it called? Twitter is like now all soft. No, it isn't.
Like, becoming more empathetic doesn't mean that you're more soft.
Exactly.
But then again, there are times where I will be on Twitter and someone will be getting like cancelled or like dragged for something that makes no sense to me. And everyone on my feed is like hopping onto this bandwagon, and I'm just there like, I don't think what they did was bad. Like, am I a bad person because I don't think what they did was bad? And then you start questioning yourself, because you're like, if everyone agrees with this thing, why don't I agree with it? And then you kind of just like follow the crowd, and it's really toxic, because I didn't learn anything from that experience. I just learned, oh, everyone's onto this person, I need to get onto this person. You know what I mean?
Did you guys ever end up following a bandwagon like yourself?
I proudly like to say that. But like, I think I have like when I was younger and stuff like that. I think everybody has. But when it comes to like politics and stuff like that, like I've always made sure to refrain from it, because I think it's like, you never know, because politics is basically just like what morality is. It's just people like to blur what politics and morality is, because morality is based in like Christianity and religion, and we've sort of like fucked off with that sort of shit. So now politics is just like the new label for morality.
Exactly. People try to like separate politics and morality, but
it's the exact same
political opinions.
It's the exact same thing. And like that sort of thing where it's like, you know, if you vote for Donald Trump, I'll still be your friend. You're still cool. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
We're not besties anymore.
Do you guys have any morals for yourself, like personally, like even if it's not based on religion or things like that?
Oh yeah, I have. Well, I'm an atheist, so like all of my morals are out of religion. When I was religious, I did find a lot of the things that people like had as their moral codes like a bit weird. My thing is just like, don't be racist, don't be homophobic, don't be transphobic, don't be sexist. You know, standard stuff.
Yeah.
I would think, you know, most people would have that as their morals, but you'd be surprised. You would be surprised. Like, I personally, I can't be friends with people who are like, oh, I don't agree, I don't support, but I don't hate gay people or something like that. That's just weird. It's like, choose one. You know, that's a bit confusing to me. I don't understand what you're saying. Like, that for me is like, some people might be like, oh no, you need to respect people's religion. When it's like, your religion is telling me that my identity is invalid. So it's like, what do you need to do? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, everyone's free to think what they want, but...
What about you?
I think my main idea is like, when you are faced with certain political conversations and like moral conversations, and people are like, so what's your opinion on this? What's your opinion on this? I think it's important to just stay true to what you believe in.
For sure.
And don't stray away from that, no matter how like intimidated you are from the environment. Because it's like the way that I see like how society is progressing as a whole, it's like, if you're put into a room of like 100 people, like you can, like 100 people in a film school, you can confidently say like most of them like have left-leaning views and stuff like that. So like if you were to pose a right-winged opinion, it's like, that's obviously wrong. Like most likely that right-wing opinion is going to be wrong. But it's also the conversation of like, when you're posing that conversation to a room of people, their opinion on it. But if you flip it and you have a left-wing person in a room with right-wing people, then all of a sudden that left-wing person's wrong. And it's regardless of that conversation that's posed towards you. It's like, no matter what, you're still, there's still someone going to be that you're not going to please and stuff. Yeah. But I think another thing to weigh out, which is important as well when it comes to morality and like how you live your life, it's like, you always need to make sure that you're doing the thing that makes other people happy at the same time. So it's like this weird thing where it's like you're not trying to please people, but you're also trying to make people happy.
Yeah,
It's about empathy and it's about compassion. And that's the whole thing that you need to put yourself the entire time. It's like, does this make people happy? Am I making people happy? And who's important in this conversation? Stuff like that.
I know what you mean. It's like you're trying to have like a safe zone where you're not the enemy, but I'm like I have my own opinion.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's like, and also adding on to the opinion, like I like the idea that you said, like if you had like a left-wing person who was with the right-wing person, they like kind of like almost like is that animal called a chameleon? Like they were kind of like, what's it called, camouflage themselves between them because there's so many opinions above them that they're unable to actually say their own opinion because they know that they'll be like put down upon, which is like, it's kind of like, damn, I can't just say my own opinion because now I'll feel invalid because your opinions are different compared to mine, instead of like everyone just being open-minded and accepting other people's opinions. So like, okay, you may have your opinion, I may have my opinion, but we can accept that we both have different opinions and we can clash with each other, but we can sometimes still come to an agreement of things.
Yeah. I also think sometimes it's okay to disagree with people and just disagree with people. You don't need to disagree with people and then become their friend. Like if you are very left-wing and someone is very right-winged and you guys disagree on things, it doesn't have to be like, oh yeah, we disagree but we have our differences and we'll come together in the end. Sometimes you don't have to come together in the end. Sometimes it can be like, I don't want to be friends with you because you have very different morals to me, but we can still live in the same environment. I'm not going to beat you up when I see you next, but you know, we don't have to be like besties. And I don't like the whole idea of like people can have very drastic opinions to you and you still have to like be their friend. Like sometimes we can just be acquaintances. We don't need to be friends.
I think it always like leads back to like what Oscar said of like pleasing people. You don't have to always please people. Like you're not entitled to do that at all. Exactly. You're not entitled to do any of that. You're allowed to just be your true authentic self, guys. Do you and be you, guys. Quote of today. Be who you are. But guys, is there any other topics you want to talk about?
Well, I think that sort of leads into like the other stuff as well. I mean, it like leads back to what I was saying before about like how we're moving too quickly. It's like when you're presented with that massive scale of people who are saying this is the right way of doing things, you need to follow this way of doing it, then we have this like hysteria of like perfectionism, like moral perfectionism, and like this idea that we all have to do things perfectly, morally perfectly. Like I saw this thing the other day where it's like these people who were like, oh, these TikTok boys who are wearing a skirt, they're like, I don't fuck with them because they're just doing it for the attention.
Yeah. Yes.
Things like that.
Yes. I don't know, guys. I'm ready for the talk. Let's go. No, go off.
Go on. Just let them wear their skirt.
Let it happen, man. Let it happen.
Oh, but what's the reason behind why? You don't know them. You don't know why they're wearing the skirt. So just because like, oh, they're famous TikTokers. They're doing it for clout.
They can't wear the skirt.
Well, they just want to wear the skirt.
Yeah. And I have like, oh man, I can get into like boys with skirts all day. Like I have a whole like rant about why men should wear skirts at least one day of their life.
Yes.
And like, but when it comes to like that sort of thing, like just a second ago, I wanted to finish that point really quickly. It's like you say to people, you know what, we should break down the gender barriers, and then you have a representative which is trying to break down gender stereotypes, and then you're like, I don't fuck with you because you're performing. But it's like in that instance when you're not really harming anybody and you're not really distracting from the main issue, let it happen, because you're just bringing attention to this. And it's like, oh, you can't do this, you can't do this, you can't do this. This thing you can do, but it's very, very close to this thing over here. It's like, well, what the fuck is the point then? Why should I even try? And it's like, okay, if there's no point in me trying to do this because everybody thinks I'm not going to be doing it perfectly, I might as well not do this thing. I might as well not go to gender equality club. I might as well not go to like ethnicity club, because this is all pointless. You know, like no one's going to, you know, think I'm doing the right thing. And even I'm not going to be able to support myself thinking I'm doing the right thing, because it's about everybody else's opinion. It's not about your own opinion in that dynamic.
Like back to what you were saying about, you know, the boys on TikTok wearing skirts. People like to act like those people get glorified and like they only get positives, when those men, they get lots of hate. They get tons of hate. They get death threats. They get so much shit like thrown at them. But people are like, oh look, because you have like so and so many likes or views on your TikTok, that means everyone sees this and everyone loves you. But if someone else does it, everyone hates on them, which like that's just not true. Like you're just seeing one side of it, so you can't really judge it off of that.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, I literally love this talk. This is making me like, I'm literally like grinning. Like, it makes me so happy. Because it's just like, why? It's like how people's opinions, like, okay, that man's wearing a skirt. I'm now angry at them for wearing a skirt. No, go off, wear that skirt. Like, I don't get it when people get so upset of like someone wearing a simple piece of cloth, an item, a single item that now this clothing is now identified with only women. Like, come on, guys, it's clothes. It's actually clothes.
I think wearing a skirt is so important. It's so important. I came to school once in a maid dress. As everybody knows.
I was talking to my friend about it. I was like, you don't know Oscar. He came into school with a maid dress last year.
It was great. It was so much fun.
Did you have a good time?
It was a great time. I had the best time of my life because
You should do it again.
You should do it.
It was brilliant. It was lovely, but
Because what?
That's why we're going here.
Yeah, that's it.
guys, today, no surprise for everybody. Under all these layers, I'm so hot in space. Now I'm liberated by everything. Oh my God, it was really bad because I had to like walk up the stairs, but of course I don't know how to wear a skirt. So like you can see everything from the bottom, and I just had to walk up these really steep stairs into school. I was like, fuck, please don't look. And there's a whole crowd of people coming behind me.
Holding you like
No! It's so bad.
But now you've had the experience.
Yeah. What would you rate the experience?
I would rate it like a 6 out of 10. And I put it so low. No, actually, I rate it a 10 out of 10.
That was different.
No, because I realised, like, that I say 6 out of 10 first and foremost because when I was wearing the skirt, I got catcalled. Like, and that's the first time in my... Yeah. It's the first time in my entire life I've been catcalled, obviously, because, like, it's very clear that the difference between men and women getting catcalled is a very big difference.
Yeah.
And I think that the situational irony of the one time in my entire life I've been catcalled, I was dressed up as a woman and had makeup on me, which made me look like a woman. And there's this guy like, and it's like, I was for most of the time wearing the dress. Like for the first half of it, I was coming from Camden, so a man's not going to pull up in a dress coming from Camden. So I had this whole cowboy outfit. Like I had a whole like top layer, like secret disguise, and then I'd pull up. I was fully prepared for this.
Oh my God.
And then so it was only 6 hours of the day I was wearing the maid dress and everything, and then for those 6 hours I only had like 1 hour outside, and for that 1 hour outside. I somehow got catcalled in the middle of the day by a guy driving in his car and going like, "You look sexy." It's like
No days off.
No days off.
They never rest. They never
take a break. Get a grip. Get a grip. Go drive. Just go.
Drink
Like,
watch some TV.
oh my gosh. How did you feel when that happened?
This is the interesting thing. It's because like as a man, you've never dealt with that before, and like you think of it as like. And let me explain my point first. But you think of it as funny at very first sight, right? Because it's like, oh my God, I just got catcalled because I'm like dressed up. And then you go into your next lesson and then you think to yourself, fuck, I can't wear this dress around because I'm like kind of scared now.
Yeah.
I realize like people are looking at me in that way. And that's why I think it's important to wear a maid dress.
Yeah.
Because you realize the fact that people have to deal with that every single day. Women have to deal with that every single day. And once you put that dress on, you become a new person. Yeah. It's like Superman, but like you just get discriminated against.
Wow.
It's more...
It opens your eyes.
No, it opens your eyes. Yeah, no,
it's crazy.
For sure.
And I think that's an important thing. I think every man should wear a dress at least once in their life.
You heard it here first.
You heard it here, guys.
Wear a
dress.
Wear a dress.
Wear a dress for a day, guys. Please. Wear it.
We have a day in the school.
Wear a dress. Yeah, please.
Everyone has to wear.
That'd be amazing.
Oh my gosh.
So good.
I'm so happy that I heard your experience about that. That was like an amazing thing to hear about, and I'm glad that like you brought it upon. Like people should wear a dress, you know, have an experience, and like the fact that like you went outside for an hour once, and that just happened to you, which is just like scary.
It puts you in a lot.
Yeah, and it's like you had the realization afterwards of like, oh my gosh, you had like a different view of what people are actually seeing you as than before those few hours beforehand, where you were just like, yeah, I'm just wearing this dress because it's just a dress, you know, just chilling,
just living my life.
Do you feel that, you know, when you like go to gender equality group, you know, wear a dress, stuff like that, do you feel like people have like a higher view of you, like the bar for men is like really low. That when you do certain things, it's like, oh my gosh, Oscar did this thing, like he's amazing. Like, do you feel like people view you like that?
We discussed this a second ago before the podcast and stuff, where we were like, what the bar is for men. And I think the bar for men is really interesting. And like rape culture is something we talked about like a little bit before, where it's like rape culture benefits every single type of man. If you are a rapist or you're not a rapist, regardless, it still benefits you. Because, and I there's like this stupid like TikTok that I saw on it, but it was actually like really put a lot of things in perspective, because it's like when you are not a rapist, or you're not a sexual offender, or you don't sexually harass or sexually, assault or stuff like that to women, like when you don't do that sort of things, you're praised, because it's like, this guy I feel safe and comfortable around. It's like that dualizing sense where it's like, this person I feel safe around, this person I don't feel safe around. And like somehow when you feel safe around a man, it's like, wow, this person is incredible, this person's a good person. When it's like, it should be normal to feel comfortable around people. Like that's just a default. Yeah. Like we shouldn't have to. I mean, obviously, women shouldn't have to be like pose a threat when they're in a room alone with a man, but they are. Yeah. And I think that's an interesting thing. And like the stuff about how in not even just in rape culture, but just in what we're doing as a whole, as a society to move forward, and what men are doing as their own role in it. It's like, oh man, that's like tough to get into. Yeah. It's difficult because you realize like how like really fucked up everything is. Yeah. Because it's like, as soon as this person does this thing, then everybody's like, I fuck with this person because they're doing this thing, and this thing is this thing. And I think that like links to everything I've been saying before as well. It's like, with the whole progressivism thing and the whole society moving forward thing and stuff like that. And it's like the whole, like, oh yeah, this, let's move forward, guys. Let's all do this as a change. When it's like, the reason why I come to Gender Equality Club and the reason why I come on like this podcast is because, and this sounds so pretentious to say, because it's like, look at me. The reason why I'm doing this is it's not because I'm following the crowd. I'm my own person. But like, I'm not like other guys. I'm independent. Yeah, pick me, guys. Yeah.
I respect women.
I love women.
Not date me. Yeah. But it's like the reason why I do it is because like it's supposed to challenge you. And I think like if anybody can take anything from today, it's that I want you to be challenged, and I want you to be walking on eggshells, and I want everybody to be like, pose that question and be like, that's wrong. Like, why would you say something like that? And then I want them to be like, why is that wrong? Why are we not allowing that in these spaces that we're in? Why can't we have those sort of conversations out loud and freely as if it's like something which is just, you can talk about? Why is it so wrong? And like when you pose that question to people, then it reintroduces some amount of familiarity and some amount of compassion that you didn't have before. And I think you don't have right now. I think we don't really have that level of compassion where it's just all cancel culture. Yeah. And it's like, fuck everybody, man. You do this one thing wrong from 2013, you're a terrible person. I'll fuck with you. You get ostracized from the entirety of society, but you don't get taught what you did wrong specifically. You don't get taught why that's not compassionate of you, or you don't get taught why that's, something that's different from the past. You don't get taught these things. You just have to live with the consequences, and that's it. Yeah.
So where would you say, like, where can you be taught these things? Because, of course, like, our schools won't be able to teach us those things. But, like, would you say in different conversations with other people, like interacting with various other people, you'll be able to actually be taught all these things? Would you say that's the best way to learn how to actually do things?
I think the dynamic that you can do that is when you create personal diversity in certain spaces. So like in Gender Equality Club, I think one of the main complaints that like people have is that it's just sort of like a room filled with a certain type of person. Yep. And it's like, if we want to have challenging conversations and if we want to teach people, we need to allow people to know like this is a teaching environment. This is not a personal environment where things have to be this certain way. It's a place where things are malleable. We have principles. We're not mean to each other. We're not like uncompassionate to each other, but we teach people and we pose people those questions. And then through the questions that they are posed, then they ask themselves those questions. And through those questions that they ask themselves, that's the environment where they get the answers from. Mm-hmm. That's the environment they get the answers from. That's where I think you can learn it, though. I think there's other dynamics as well. I think it's just like allowing yourself to explore so much, and like realizing that the conversation isn't just in first world countries. It's like all over the world. It's like in Mexico, the transgender community and stuff like that. The whole conversation around transgenderism and how discriminated they are, but how supported they are at the same time, and like that conflict that's going on there. And then it's like Russia with the pussy riots. Yeah, man, those are so interesting. Like these women who are going outside of like, what's the name of it? Like the Houses of Parliament for Russia. I forgot the name of it. I'll call it that for the time being. Yeah, just say that, yeah. And they're like going out there and they're getting like physically abused and the police are doing nothing there.
Yeah, no.
And then exploring that. But then you also explore how strong women are in that country. Mm-hmm. And like they were fighting in the war, I think, in like the Second World War. Or they were fighting one of the wars or something. I think it was the Cold War.
Beat them up.
But like they were like doing their own thing there. Mm-hmm. Don't fact check me on that. I'm probably really wrong, and I'm like chatting shit right now. But I think
like shut up, this guy.
Like
you poser.
You poser. But finding where that thing is important, I think, and like finding all over the world that there is moving forward. Yeah. But there's also regression all over the world as well.
Okay. But guys, anything else to say before we wrap things up?
I think quickly I just want to say that I think people need to look within themselves if they need to, in order to grow compassion towards people who have the same morals as them. Like people might be like, oh, how did you not know about that thing? But I think if you really want to educate people, we should look at times when, you know, we weren't always the people that we were today. We had like completely different morals when we were growing up, and we should be able to look back on ourselves and be like, you know, I used to be transphobic and like now I'm not. The same can happen for someone else. You can, if they had the knowledge that you had and the resources that you had, they probably wouldn't be like that. So I think people just want to be like, oh, look at me, and like I'm so smart, I know all these things, but you have to look within yourself and see that you are not perfect.
Preach.
We're back again
from another
dimension. In this realm, my name is Ray.
My name's Oscar.
My name's Grace. Yeah.
This is definitely not a different dimension.
Such a good intro.
Okay, but let's go back. Do you want to talk about toxic masculinity?
Yeah, I do.
Let's go.
Yes.
What do you want to talk about it?
How do you feel about like the conversation of toxic masculinity, specifically in like feminism spaces?
That's a big topic to get into.
Mm-hmm, no, big one.
Gargantuan.
It is a chunky topic.
It is a chunky topic.
Yeah.
Where do we start?
Should we start in films?
Do you feel like, because I know we were talking earlier about how men don't want to feel like they're buying into like feminism conversations when they bring up men's problems. Do you feel like when women bring up toxic masculinity and they're like, oh, you know, men go through stuff too, do you feel like they talk about it like accurately? Because I feel like I see a lot of like feminists try to be like, oh look, like them try to bring up men's topics and like men's issues, but I don't feel like they
completely understand, because it's like it's very hard to bring up a topic that you're not involved with, that doesn't affect you as a person, because it's just like you're not the minority who's actually being affected by it, so you can't really address the issue, you know. But
I think first and foremost, one thing that I've always had a problem with is the fact that we call it toxic masculinity. Like I'm just gonna be completely dead ass. Like when I was first getting into like feminism and first getting into like society and how we change and stuff, one of the big problems I had with it was the fact that it's called toxic masculinity. When I think that's just such an unpleasant label to give something, and it is toxic. Don't get me wrong. Like it like pollutes every single environment that we're in, basically every single environment that we're in. But I think calling it something which is so easily labeled as something which is harmful and is to the blame of masculinity in and of itself, I think is where we're going wrong.
Yeah, I think it puts the focus on masculinity. I remember seeing a thing that was like, masculinity is just the absence of femininity, and that the idea of toxic masculinity is built upon anything that isn't associated with what is feminine. And toxic masculinity doesn't exactly allow men to claim being masculine because they're seen as toxic by default.
I think like what we perceive and what we understand of masculinity is becoming a very fragile understanding at the moment, because what we know, and I think this goes for a lot of young men, and I think that's why right-wing like leaders are becoming so like entertaining and so like easy to draw in so many young people, young men specifically, is because of the fact that like this idea about masculinity has become so dismantled into something which is categorized as bad. So I think like when we're trying to have that conversation about toxic masculinity and how it affects women and how it affects men, I think when we start with it, I think first off, recognizing that men and toxic masculinity is a very human thing. And it's not to do with, it is to do obviously with how gender roles work, but it's also to do with the psychological aspects of it. And then that's the first thing that we need to get out of the way. I think the first thing we need to get out of the way is just saying, like, this is not your fault. We understand it, like, but this isn't inherently right either.
Yeah.
And when we introduce it to the conversation of women and how it affects women, I think it affects women in every single way, shape, and form. Like, I think, like, the male gaze is something which is super interesting to me because it's literally psychological. Like, it's built in, it's embedded.
Yeah.
And it's like, I can't wrap my head around the male gaze because I don't have the male gaze. And like trying to present and understand and try and help people who have that issue is something which I can't really wrap my head around. And it's like, it's hilarious because it's like you have like common gags in like movies or films where it's like, or just in society in general, where people are like, oh, my wife, you know, I don't understand anything she's talking about. She spends about 2 hours trying to get ready. What's going on?
I'll show you this. I was thinking about who is this man? This is not Oscar.
Man. Oscar's outside in the dress.
Oh god,
that was so good.
That was amazing. I'm like shook. Nah, that was so good.
Do you do drama?
I want to, man. We're gonna get into it.
You should. Put that on your show reel.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, I get what you mean. Like the whole humor of like, oh, I hate my wife. She's
well, she takes
smelly.
2 hours to get ready. I just want to get to this fucking party, and she's taking 2 fucking hours. And it's like, well, you know, she's doing that because you make her feel like she has to do that. But yeah, continue what you're gonna say. Sorry.
I stopped putting on the accent. I can't do it. But yeah, because one thing I just understood as you were speaking is that the idea of the male gaze and the idea of toxic masculinity, it's always negative. Like the male gaze is always seen as a negative thing. And when people see like, oh yeah, these are male icons, like men that we like, men that we think are good, men that we are safe around, it's always men embracing femininity. Whenever a man is like, as soon as a man is feminine, it's like, oh yeah, he's a good guy. But if he's masculine, then it's like, oh no, he's like a red flag. It's like bad. Which has me like, why? Why is it like feminine equals good, masculine equals bad? You know what I mean?
Where do you think like sorry to interrupt you, but where do you think like the root of like toxic masculinity and like the male gaze comes from? You know, and like how do we actually have to defeat it? Because as much as we can talk about the thing of it, how do we actually demolish the whole thing as a whole? Gosh.
Propaganda. Propaganda. I think it stems back from like years and years and years ago.
Oh yeah.
Where it's like how we translated the icons of religious icons and how and what roles do they fit into, and then like we just got that, then broke it down into a more human version of it, and we're like, okay, you do this, you do this. That's how it started off. And then, like, I thought it was really interesting what you said a second ago, though, with how, like, it's a red flag when men are super masculine.
Yeah.
Because I think it's like, the reason why it's a red flag if men are super masculine is because that means that they've imposed the male gaze onto themselves. Because what men think is attractive for women is what men think is attractive for women. It's not what women think are attractive.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say about that is like propaganda, primarily. What do you think it is? Because I think it's propaganda. I don't know.
I think it's what I think, because with the thing with religion, I feel like people think it's the other way around. So people think that religion has said something and people have taken that into their morals. I think that people have a certain moral system and they reflect that onto religion. Every religion that has a god, the god is always, they say, we are made in like the God's image. I feel like humans have made gods in their image. Yeah. They have made gods as just bigger humans and have just put gods in amplified versions of human roles. So I feel like whatever society people were living in at the time, they saw those texts, and with certain like bits, they just projected their own views onto that. And also in certain countries, like especially like in England, Christianity was very like political.
Scary.
And they made all of these different versions, all these different translations, because that was their propaganda. That was what they used to tell people, because they used it to instill fear in people. That's what they used to tell people: you have to be like this because the Bible said so. And if you don't believe in this and this is going to happen to you. So I feel like it could be religion, but it could also just be that was already in society and it was just reflected back onto religion, and then it was just a cycle. You know what I mean?
I feel like it's a whole cycle in some sort of way. Like they get something and then they adapt it to their own way. Like with the what's it called? With the Bible and like in Christianity in England, how like it's literally just it came from somewhere and then it was just changed up. They made some tweaks. They said, you know what? I'm gonna change this up. No, there's no women in the Bible. What do you mean by that? What do you mean by that?
And then the popular like women. I could talk about Christianity for years.
Guys, we don't hate religion here. It's all positivity here.
I've
just want to clarify
all positivity. I've been to so many different churches because I've lived everywhere. So I've grown up in like I've been in like the Catholic Church, the Anglican Church, the Protestant Church, Jehovah's Witness Church, like all the different churches.
Oh, the shebang, the whole shebang.
The whole shebang.
You've been going off. Wow.
Everywhere you go, all these different denominations, it's the same thing. It's like, it's like back to what you were saying. It's like people, they make all these tweaks and all this, because language is so complicated. They just take a different language and they're like, oh yeah, this is how it translates to in English. Because you know, like when they were translating the Bible from like Hebrew, they had like a panel of like a group of men and they were like, okay, let's decide which English words correlates with this word.
Oof.
Yeah.
And they just decide. It was just a group of people. They just decided this is what it means.
Pick and choose. That's what you did. That's a bit mad.
They did tic-tac-toe. Yeah. But they couldn't decide.
Like what?
I choose you.
No, but I think that's just horrible. I feel like it just doesn't. We can't really go back in time and like beat the man up to be like, don't make the Bible like that. But it's just like, how can we right now at the moment like prevent it? Not even prevent it, but just slowly.
I think we need to
dim it down.
The language that we use, like with the idea of the male gaze. The male gaze. I feel like that should be the language we use to talk about certain things should be changed. Like toxic masculinity, fragile masculinity. I feel like it's the language that we use to communicate things. It communicates the wrong message.
Yeah, making sure we don't repeat the same mistakes.
Yes.
Exactly that.
And making sure we give people space to learn and people space to grow.
Yeah, because the whole thing about religion is like, it's like this right and wrong, like yes or no answers to it.
Yeah.
But the thing is like we're all people and we are all so different, and like we're all so intricate in our ways of how we perceive and understand things. So when we want to say like what is right and wrong, we just can't really just make this idea of what right and wrong is and then make it a God figure and then make sure that everybody follows it. Yeah. Because then it's just doing the same thing that religion did. Yeah. It's just the same thing that religion did.
We can't like police right and wrong and be like, you've like, you know, with like cancel culture and stuff like that. Because I feel like cancel culture definitely diminishes the problems. When like millions of people are coming at a celebrity being like, oh, you did this thing in 2013. Celebrities think cancel culture is a joke. They feel like they can do absolutely anything, and like they just see cancel joke as like, oh, there's a bunch of trolls on the internet. Like they aren't. It's not real to them. It's just numbers. It's just like letters on their screen. They just turn off their phone and they go sleep. Like it's not a real thing, and people think, oh yeah, we're holding this person accountable, and it's like, you're not, because they're not going to learn anything, they don't care, and they're going to come back. Like, every person that's been like cancelled, they all come back. So
yeah. Okay, I'll say it's a tiny little point, but adding on to that, it's like the way that class affects that shit as well.
Yeah.
It's like if you have a celebrity who gets cancelled, they'll come back.
Yeah.
But when you have someone on a lower scale of the social ladder and the popularity ladder, it's like they don't get that same compassion. They lose everything.
True.
And we shouldn't be targeting the people who are on the lower things, which are probably just miseducated. We should be targeting the people who are higher on that scale and know better.
Yes.
But you were going to say?
Oh, I was. Love Tyler, the creator, guys, but Tyler, like, every day, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. He's a prime example of a person who's in a hierarchy place.
Nicki Minaj.
Yeah, that's the end of our episode, guys.
Bye, guys. But yeah, there's
so many people, like, adding on to all of you guys has just said, there's so many people in the hierarchy where they can just say whatever they want, do whatever they want, because they have such a high status. And like you said, they can just switch off the phone, dash it, and they'll get paid the next day for super bass. Like, it don't matter. It literally doesn't matter. But other people
have done serious things, like actual serious.
Yeah, no.
Mr. Dawson.
Thank you guys for tuning in to what you're saying. That's the end of it.
No. But like when people have actually done like actual like
actual crimes. Yeah, no.
They will still come back on YouTube 2 years later. Hey guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel.
Oh, especially on YouTube.
We talk about him.
I'm not talking about him. We don't have time for that.
Oh, we're talking about.
That's a whole other episode.
But guys, we do really need to wrap up. We've been talking a bit too much. You're not gonna lie. So, any last words, guys? You want to say, Oscar?
Peace and love.
Peace and love, guys.
Thank you to Oscar for coming.
Yeah.
Big up, Oscar. Woo, 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 woo. And that's a wrap, guys. Cut.
Cut.